for you guys, for you all. So welcome to That's a Wrap, and we're going to talk about trying to find the perfect final, if there is any such thing as the perfect final, because I always think every year that maybe I'm going to find the perfect final, and I don't think that it actually exists. It's like the unicorn that you keep chasing to try and find exactly the right one. But I do think that I can break it down into kind of 4 C's that we can consider when you're trying to work out what is the perfect final for you, because what's the perfect final for me and what's the perfect final for you are going to look a little bit different. But I think maybe we can come to a conclusion that there are 4 C's in action here, and they are choice and content, context, and capacity. And I want to explain those in a little bit more detail. And that's what I'm going to use our 20 minutes for tonight, is looking at those 4 C's. And probably we'll look at choice the longest, and then we're going to revisit it a little bit in each of the other ones. Choice to me is kind of an important part of that final. And that's been the key to me to making my finals more successful for my students, and more successful for me as the grader, because, it's easier to grade when they're a little less boring to grade. So I'm just going to encourage you to be open-minded. We always say at My Fluency Matters, give it 5 minutes. Like if you think at first, no, I don't like that idea, we always say, give it 5 minutes before you decide that you don't like something. So choice, content, context, and capacity. Those are our 4 C's we're going to think about tonight. So first, we're going to talk about choice, and I want to look at several different ways that I've included choice on different types of final exams. And I know that every time you give a final exam, you have a little bit different context. Now, I will tell you that I teach with different colleagues, and we all look at final exams differently. And different times of the year, we have a lot different amounts of time to grade our final exams. So in the fall semester, you have all of Christmas break if you want to, plus sometimes we have a little more built-in time to get our exams graded than we do in the spring semester. We pretty much will finish tomorrow at 2:15, and we need to have our grades in by 8 a.m. Monday morning. All of our grades in and totaled and ready to go by 8 a.m. Monday morning, and that is it. So when you're thinking about what kind of exam you would give in the spring semester, if I had to give every student an exam, I might not give them as elaborate an exam in the spring as I might consider giving in the fall, because my time is much more limited in what I can grade. So in the fall semester, what we decided to do choice-wise was we are a dual credit school. And so we have to have all 4 of the skills on our exam for dual credit. And since we have to have all 4 of the skills, we have to have listening, reading, writing, and speaking. But we also want the students to have a little bit of choice in that, because we have students who are at a variety of proficiency levels. And so we gave them a selection of authentic articles. Well, we went to Newsela.com and we pulled articles that are at different proficiency levels, and we let the students choose from those articles. So they are not authentic articles. They are articles that are written for students who are reading at different proficiency levels. But we pulled out articles and we let the students choose the article that they were most drawn to. So they got to pick 2 of the articles, whatever the headline that, most called to them. And then they got to pick out of that article, each article, they just read through the article and they wrote down in English 5 things I understood from this article are, and 5 things I understood from the second article are. So the title of my first article is, and the title of my second article is, and then 5 things I understood. So in doing that, we were giving them a choice over what they were reading. We were letting them kind of pick topics that appealed to them, and we were letting them have a little control over the Lexile level of the article that they chose, so that they could find something that when they looked at the article, they felt like they would be successful in reading it. We also do the same with the listening. We do the listening in 2 parts as well. The listening, we do one with teacher voice. We always read readers in our classroom. So one of the listenings, We talk about one of the readers that we have read in the classroom, and we tell them kind of a summary of the story, or we'll tell them our opinion of the story, or we'll tell them what kind of like a movie review of the story. This consumer says this about the story, and they have to list 5 things they understood about what we said about the story. But then we also have a native speaker voice. So it might be a commercial that we found on YouTube. It might be a video that they watch from YouTube. And again, they're listening and they're writing down 5 things that they understood in the table below. So we do give them the element of choice in their final exam in the listening and speaking. So that's an option. If you need to include a listening or a speaking, that's one way that you can do it and still give your students a little bit of control. How do you put a grade number to that? That's a great question, Katie. We just do this by, these are both out. So this little square right here would be out of 5 points. And then we do 2 of those. So that would be out of 10 points. So if they would have 5 things that they understood and they get all 5 of them, that would be 5 out of 5. If they only list 4 things that they understood, they would get 4 out of 5 on that. And then the same on the listening. If they understood 4 things instead of 5 things, they would, if they don't understand very clearly, if they sort of get it half right, then we would give some partial credit. Like if we can tell on the listening that they didn't quite understand what it was saying, then we would give them maybe, 3 out of 5 because they got the main idea of what it was saying, but they didn't. So that would be a little more, you only get about a half a point on this one because it's not quite right, but you get a point. Do you read or listen to all the options? We kind of have reused the same articles the last couple of years. So I have read the articles. We only have, I would say we have about 8 article choices. So it wasn't that time consuming. They're not very long. They're about a page long. So they're not super long articles. So it wasn't very time consuming to read them. So, and the information is, it's written about novice high to intermediate low. I do not enable closed captioning on the video for my upper levels, and on the lower levels, sometimes if the video is a little fast, but it's something that's a topic that I want to show, I'll hit that little in YouTube, you can slow the video down to 1.25 or 1.25 or whatever. I do slow the video down every once in a while, a little bit for them if I think they need it. But a lot of times that if it's a topic that you've studied and you find just the right video, they don't need it slowed down as much. But there are times that there's something that I want to show that they do need it slowed down a little bit. And YouTube has that really great feature where you can slow it down a little bit. And it's only 5 points on there. But the commercials are really great because a lot of the context of the commercial videos comes from the visuals too. So they can pick up a little bit along with that. And I always try to find videos that are very clear. It is tricky looking through. So if you look in some of the Spanish teacher groups, that's a really good place to find videos that have Spanish that is really clear and enunciated, because if you find something where it's not clearly spoken, your novices are going to really struggle to understand what's being said if characters aren't speaking directly to the camera, where they can kind of lip read a little bit in that too. That can make it a little tricky for especially your little guys. The 2s, the ones are really tough. On the 1s, I believe, I'm not teaching 1 right now, but I believe on our 1s, they still do. We have a little on the listening. They do a little bank where they have we do a commercial at Christmas time. They have a Christmas commercial where it has, did Santa say this or did the boy say that? And there's a commercial where Santa comes in and a boy catches Santa putting the gifts under the tree, and they have an exchange. And so the kids are just identifying who said each line. And then there's another one about a Christmas candy, and they're filling in the blanks with the words from the word bank. So that is a listening one. that they do at the level 1 level, where they have all the answers kind of there for them, and they aren't really listening so much to show comprehension of the whole commercial overall. On the speaking, we also give them a choice. And this is I'm gonna come back to this again in a little bit when we talk about our content. I let them choose from 3 different topics when they speak. I want them to tell the most detailed story possible. So speaking is our last skill to develop, and it's the thing that the students are most nervous about. When they write, I encourage them to compare and contrast things, and I encourage them to, maybe make inferences and do kind of deeper dives into language. But a lot of times when they're speaking for a test where it's a high pressure situation, I'll let them lean harder on narrative. So I'll let them do things for their exam, like retelling a story, where it's more a thing where they're leaning on knowledge that they have and that they're really solid in. So I'll give them options like, make sure you know the important vocabulary, things that we've spent a lot of time on, like the Robo and La Noche novel that we read. Retell the story, or retell your favorite part of the story with lots of detail. Or we've studied the rainforest. Tell me all you know about the rainforest, its parts, its climate, the wildlife there. Or Vida y Muerte en la Mara Salvatrucha. Retell the full story, or retell your favorite parts with lots of detail. And you'll record this on Flipgrid during class for me. And that's how you'll present it. We do some preparation for that. We do kind of a 3-phased preparation for this. We don't do this on exam day. We do this the day before exam day. And they tell it to something in my room with a face. And after I give them 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes to tell this story to something in the room with a face. And so they work for 10 minutes trying to tell their favorite part of the story or the whole story to something in the room. It can be, they find pictures of my kids or my husband, who's the tech guy at school, or they tell it to posters of Senor Woolley on the wall, whatever they find. And then they tell it to someone near them, and they have 5 minutes to tell the story to someone near them. And then someone tells them the story, and then whatever their story is. And then I tell them, okay, now you have to record yours, but you have to record it in 2 minutes. So now they've had 10 minutes and 5 minutes. So when I tell them you have 2 minutes, that feels like a really short amount of time, because they did 10 and 5, so all of a sudden 2 minutes sounds like the shortest amount of time ever. So I sort of mentally tricked them into thinking 2 minutes is a really short amount of time, which to retell a part of a story it is, and intermediates do a lot of so 2 minutes isn't very long to retell a big part of a story. So, and really I can hear everything I need to hear in 2 minutes. I don't want to listen to more than 2 minutes of a kid speaking. If I have to listen to 100 speaking tests, I don't need to listen to more than 200 minutes of speaking. So 2 minutes is plenty. This is actually an example of a Spanish writing exam that I give. And this is actually what we're doing right now for our finals this semester. I have them write, but I give them different topics for their choice. So I give them the topics, the main topics we study. We do a lot of little shorter stories, little mini stories during the school year, but I feel like those are so small that it's hard to come up with a lot to say about them. So for the exam, I'm going to give them like our big major. So we did a supernatural unit with 3 huge, like scary stories. We talked about Chacmo, we talked about the feather pillow, and we talked about the movie El Orfanato. We did Medicina Oscura. We talked about health. We talked about the plastic ocean. We talked about the book 48 Hours. I gave them the choice. You can choose how you want to do your writing. You can compare and contrast 2 different resources. So if you want to do the scary story unit, you can compare and contrast 2 stories. If you want to do Plastic Ocean, you can compare and contrast the way 2 different people, are dealing with plastics in the ocean. You can make logical inferences. So you can infer things about the characters. You can infer things about the way people are handling the plastics around our community. You can just do book report style. You can state just the facts, or you can give and defend an opinion. And then I give them the choice of how you want to produce the product. So you could do an essay style. So give introduction, conclusion, body paragraphs. You can do a magazine article. So write an article where you give some illustrations as your images and, lay it out like an article. It's the same thing. An article is the same thing as an essay. It just, in their mind, it sounds like something cool and different. You could write a letter introducing 2 characters. So a letter is the same thing as an essay. Like they have to come up with an introduction to introduce the people. Then they have to give a body where they explain why they would like each other. And then they have to wrap it up with a conclusion to close the letter. Like all of them, I'm getting them to write the exact same thing, but I'm letting them think they have this choice of how. So it's all mental manipulation. Or they can write a blog post where they give or defend an opinion on a topic and use strong evidence that they know what they're talking about. And a lot of the kids like to do a blog post because they're really good. Like we do that a lot in our units. So they are really good at giving and defending opinions by now. We also, when we're talking about choice, so this is what my colleague is doing this spring, because I'm only giving my exam to like 32 kids because my juniors and seniors are mostly exempt, and her Spanish 1s and 2s all have to take it. So she is giving the exam to a lot more kids. So she's giving a multiple choice. And so we went through the content that we had and we made multiple choice questions. Instead of doing like vocab and grammar points, we took those things and we just put them into multiple choice questions where the words are all in the context of different activities. But to give them choice, we gave them a skipper. So if you find an activity you don't want to do, you can do the skipper. So you can skip any one of the sections in the first 4 parts of the test if you want to do any one of these. If you want to retell a class story, tell your own story, or write 10 events that occurred in our show, Internado Laguna Negra. And we'll come back to what these activities are in just a minute. I don't want you to think I'm not going to talk about them, but they come into play later. So your content, I wanted to ask you, think about your content and how valuable the content is that you do. Like I said, some of my stories, like we might tell a story to work the verbs that change from I to Y in the preterite tense. And that story is important because it's introducing my students to the idea that some of the verbs change from I to Y in the preterite tense. But we do that story for about 8 days, that unit for about 8 days. And that story itself is going to be forgotten. So having that story be part of my final exam seems like when we spend 3 to 4 weeks on most of our other units, that story is such a teeny part of our semester that I sort of pull that out. I don't put that in as part of the content of my final exam as one of my choices. So it is okay to let them choose just from the big chunks of content too. So don't be afraid to kind of chuck out some of the content that maybe isn't as weighty because it's okay to make the exam lean heavier on the things that are heavier in your classroom. And then context, that's where we're going to go back to these other little guys. So context, this activity is called 6 of one and half a dozen of another. I just took one of the units that we did, and to use all of the vocab and all of the grammar that we did in that unit, I made 6 statements that described one person and 6 statements that described the other person, and they have to identify which is which. And so it's using all the vocab and grammar that we did in that unit. It's using all of the, story parts from that unit. Well, they were actually 2 different readers. One was about Felipe Alo, one was about Mata La Piñata. And so they're just identifying which ones are about Felipe, which ones are about Mata La Piñata. This activity is called 8 is enough. 8 statements are true about this story that we read. So again, it lets me use all the vocabulary and grammar that we use to talk about that story, but they have to identify the 8 true statements. So I'm using all of the things that we studied, but I'm using them in a context of a sentence instead of isolating them into the grammar points and into fill in the blanks. But it's still super easy to grade. And then this one is an activity that we call Find the Faker. We give them an image, and then we give them 4 sentences. 3 of them describe the image and 1 doesn't. And they just have to find the faker, the one that doesn't describe the image. And sometimes we do it the opposite way. We give them 1 image and 4 sentences, and they have to pick the sentence that describes the image. And we call it which situation is which description. So those are some ways to use the context of the class to, test with even a multiple choice on your final exam. But also don't forget, oh, well, here, I forgot I made them bigger so that you could see them better. Sorry. Don't forget that your context also includes your colleagues, because that makes a big difference. Like I said, my colleagues and I work really well together in that we are separate. Like my colleague, Chrissy, is doing the multiple choice exam and I'm doing the writing exam, and we're fine with that. We allow each other to do things our own way. But I know in some departments, it's not like that. Everybody has to do the same department exam. So remember that your context matters. So if you have to design a department exam together, just make sure that you take all of the department's feelings into consideration as you write the exam, so that you come up with something that everybody is comfortable with. And the last thing, because we're like 2 minutes over, I promised you 20 minutes. The last thing, because this is the most important thing, is your capacity. We are at capacity by the time you get to May, and really even in December or January. I'm not sure if you do exams in January. We do them at December to end the semester. By the time you get to the end of a semester, any semester, you are at maximum capacity for what you can handle for that semester. And so you have to also keep in mind what you have the capacity for. When you're writing an exam, you have to consider, what is my capacity for grading this? It may look great to you to say, oh yeah, I'd love to have an exam that I could, have them write a blog post. But if you have 135 students that you're going to have to grade in 18 hours, you don't want to give an exam like that. So it is absolutely okay to say, hey, I can't do that. Maybe I'll do the blog post as, something that I do for an assessment in Spanish 4 earlier in the year. But instead on the exam, I'm going to go for the multiple choice. I like that idea of the 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I have 2 different things that I could compare. I'm going to try and incorporate that one. So be sure that you keep your own capacity in mind, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you don't have the energy to go on and grade what you have in front of you, because we just got to get through to the end of the year right now. We have to be able to put one foot in front of the other and get her done. So you want to have something that reflects what your kids can do, reflects what they have learned, reflects those 4 C's, though: their choice, the content, the context, and your capacity to be able to grade it and to get it done. That's it. That's your 20-minute quick burst of final exam writing advice. I'm going to answer questions if you have any, and I want you to feel free to go. Again, we are at capacity. So if your capacity is 20 minutes, please feel free to go. I totally understand. I am happy to answer questions though, because I am on my last day tomorrow. So I am not at capacity right now. Plus, like I said, I only have to give 32 exams. So my capacity has opened up quite a bit since the juniors and seniors have left. So you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Please let me know how I can answer any questions for you before you go, or if you'd like to email me, I'm Carrie@somewheretoshare.com. I would be happy to answer questions that way as well.
Hey, Carrie, it's Katie. I have a question. So thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
The ideas and the choices. It'll make grading much easier when they enjoy what they do.
Yes.
But so our department, the way that we assess them is through proficiency. And so we follow the actual proficiency levels and we say that you've met for level 3, it's intermediate, mid 2 is 100%. Do y'all follow that kind of like, do you put a proficiency level to the accuracy?
We actually do, but the national average tends to be around intermediate, low to mid after 4 years of language study. And so we don't set ours as high as you have yours. We have intermediate mid as our goal after year 4. So we have our 3s. We would like to push them to be writing toward that intermediate mid, but we have intermediate low as our goal at that point.
And do you get the national average from like the Apple test scores?
Actually, I have, if you send me an email, I'll send you
Okay.
the link to the study that Castles did the study in 2010. The Apple scores are showing that in writing and speaking, they're about intermediate 2 to 3 at year 4 right now. The last time I checked, I guess in March or so, and that was what they were showing for the national scores at that point.
Thank you so much. I'll email
You're
you right
welcome.
now.
Any other questions? Well, it was good to get to see everybody tonight, and I appreciate you being here, and I hope to get to see you again soon, and we will have some more little master classes as we go along. This summer, we hope to have some little classes to get ready for the new school year next year. So you guys have a really great night, and we'll see you again soon.